Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LeanTossup Call of Duty League podcast. We are back here. We are now ready for Major 2, for the qualifiers for Major 2. We are previewing Major 2 Week 1. I unfortunately have no video today because I'm not in a great place for podcasting at this exact today, but I'll be back on full video next week for Major 2 Week 2. But you're going to have full audio from me and full text in the bottom. I'm joined, as always, by my co host, CDLMetrics. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Yeah, unfortunately, no video for you, but mine is still up and running. So if anyone wants to look at my beautiful face, here it is. But yeah, it is an exciting time, I would say. We have Major 2 qualifiers kicking off this weekend for the CDL, which we'll talk about quite a bit. The Super Bowl was yesterday, and the Chiefs lost, so most of America is happy about that. And I'm a huge college basketball fan, and we are very much in the thick of it now. Next month, March Madness starts, which is, I would argue, the greatest postseason tournament format any sport has ever created. Super hyped up for that. And then, yeah, baseball season right after that, or basically the end of the month, next month. Tons coming up here. Unfortunately, no NFL for 7 months ish, something like that. Yeah, we'll still have plenty to tide us over. But yeah, excited to talk about the games and everything going on in the CDL world.
Hmm. Yeah, no football now. But there will be the UFL, or I
Hmm.
think it's called UFL, yeah, and then the CFL obviously. But yeah, no NFL or college for a few months. But we have Call of Duty, which I think in some cases is just as good, if not better. So moving on, we're gonna recap how we did in Major 1 here, and these were our plays. I went 1 and 2, you went 1 and 2. Phase, I had phase minus 32 and a half. That cashed. That's the one that cashed. I had Optic minus 51 and a half map 1, and then I had Thieves minus 1.5 map 3. That was dumb. Thieves should have cashed that one. That should have, the one minus 1.5 should have worked there, but that didn't. You had Boston Breach to reach the final. That's very rough there. And Carolina, map 2 to win. They did beat Thieves in map 2 in the search. And then Cloud9 unfortunately reach around and bit you. Then again, they eliminated Boston Breach in round. Oh no, yeah, that was them in
Hmm.
round one that beat Boston Breach. So yeah, all in all, not a great week for us. But again, it's really hard for just the 4 games. I had a relatively good weekend overall though in the other rounds, but unfortunately we only have the first 3 rounds, the first 3 picks that are there to talk about. So yeah, what are your thoughts on the weekend as a whole?
Yeah, for me, obviously the big one was Boston Breach. I was probably the highest person on Boston Breach in the world going into Major 1, and they definitely crashed down back to earth, which I figured might happen, but I wanted to trust my numbers at least, and if they were right, then I thought a Boston Breach run was possible, but it was very much the opposite. Yeah, they ran into FaZe in round 1, which I knew was going to be tricky. I didn't realize FaZe were going to just kill everybody they played. Matches against Thieves were relatively close, but FaZe were on another level at that major. And then my rationale for that third pick was like, I think Boston Breach are still good. Even if they lose to FaZe, I have no faith in Cloud9. And then as that match got closer, Boston gets swept by FaZe, and then the next day they play Cloud9. As that match got closer, I was just like, I could see it coming from a mile away. I was like, man, my New York to get eliminated round 1 is just, I don't feel good about it anymore. And it took a game 5 for it to happen, but Cloud9 did get the win. Credit to them. I would say that's their first good win of the year. It wasn't super convincing, but they got the dub. And then, yeah, Carolina, map 2, just thought they were a better search team, and they did come through against Thieves, which we'll talk about Thieves quite a bit later. But yeah, I thought Major 1 was great overall in Madrid. It was our first European event in quite some time, but hopefully our picks can bounce back a little bit as we head into Major 2 now.
Yeah. Moving on, the combined model plays, they did good in the games. Toronto map 1, Moneyline minus 1.5 map 2, and then Thieves map 3. However, though, our tournament projected picks didn't do us so great. Toronto to win outright to reach the final. Toronto did crash and burn shortly after winners round run 1. And then Carolina, they did make it to day 3, actually, the final day 4, actually, but they did not reach the final. They got stopped by Miami, and then they didn't even get it. But had they won that game, and then they would have had a chance to get to the final, but Probably unlikely based on how things were going that weekend. But overall, though, again, in actual games, a pretty strong showing there for the actual games. That being said, moving on to the CDL points contest, you and Doug Leby find themselves locked in a very close race there, only 20 points separating you. I'm a bit back at 335. However, though, I do have the secret weapon of the top 1 and 2 teams from the major. So the thing is that long term, winning majors will pay off more than that. Doug Leby beat you out because he had the teams. He basically had two of the teams that made it to the final day, and obviously the team that came second. That was a huge boost. Ultra Falter, but you both had Ultra in that case. But I think we'll have to see. This is going to be a match of if Carolina and Miami can maintain the same pace and continue to make finals. Maybe if Boston gets in the mix, then yeah, okay. But the combined power of FaZe and Thieves is like longer term as the minor wins rack up. I think actually there's only one more minor, but if one of them wins minor two, and if they both make it to the finals and maybe they alternate wins, that's going to be a lot of firepower. It's going to be hard for Ravens and the other ones to catch up with as well. And we'll talk about this in a second. Vancouver has already made a team change. There is some benefit to that. The Vancouver team we see on Friday will be a different Vancouver team. They might be already make a team change. They might already be ahead of the game on terms of other teams. If Vancouver can get themselves in the mix, then I'll be right back up there with you two. Yeah, what are your thoughts on the standings here?
Yeah, a lot of movement. That was expected because a ton of CDL points got handed out just over the course of one weekend. And yeah, it was a good one for me for sure. This table could look very different if Thieves were able to pull off the win against FaZe in that final match. And they were very close. Like it very well could have flipped that way. But yeah, I feel good about my team right now. I think from an overall perspective, like the teams that jump out to me are clearly Atlanta FaZe. If you have FaZe, you are literally sitting second through whatever that is, 12th place. And that's largely due to the fact that they won the major. So far, that's been good. The other team that sticks out is Miami. All top four teams have Miami in their lineup in some way. And they got a third place finish after a kind of shaky, dare I say, like lucky winner's bracket start. Not that it was lucky that they beat Optic in round one, but they did get those tiebreakers to get the 8 seed to give themselves the opportunity to get that upset in round one, if that all makes sense. So they took advantage of that fully. The fact that the major was in Madrid and you had a full Spanish roster, that clearly helped them. And that was awesome to see. They made it all the way to Sunday. They won that first match on Sunday to make top 3, and then unfortunately ran into those big teams, dropped down and lost to Thieves in that semifinal game. Really good showing from Miami. And then, yeah, some disappointing showings here and there. I think probably had the most disappointing result of any team last weekend. They made top 8. So, yeah, you really would have liked them to see at least a top 4 finish. But, yeah, they just struggled a little bit. Now they're making a roster change. We'll talk about that a little later. But, yeah, overall, there's still a lot of season left, so we'll see how it shakes out. But yeah, it's been very interesting so far to track this at least.
And this will be continue. This will be interesting to see as we go. But I think you got to feel bad for the ones who had Optic. Now, again, even there's some hope there because they replaced Pred Hook with Pred. But yeah, some of the one at the bottom here. This one's pretty rough. Like
yeah, I liked what she had built. Like she was the only person who did a 5-team build, but I fear that 4 of those teams aren't even going to make champs. So what good is it if all those teams are at the bottom of the table? But I like the idea. She at least got unique with it, and sometimes that works great, and sometimes you're in last. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for her here, but who knows? If Cloud9 just turn into the best team in the league, maybe she's got a shot. Although there's a lot of other teams with Cloud9, so maybe not, but yeah.
We'll see. All right, league news. So obviously, FaZe win the major. Obviously, they went 4-0 and 13-5 in map count. Very tough matches against Thieves. Thieves also were a very dominant team all weekend, only losing really to FaZe, and actually only really losing matches to FaZe. They lost. The only map they lost all weekend was to FaZe, and all 5 of FaZe's map losses were to Thieves. It's very clear those are the top 2 teams. Ultra got eliminated by them as well, and then Carolina. Obviously, the surprise there being Carolina and Miami coming up really close, but again, there are some surprises, and we'll see if they can maintain that as we go through. Around the league, protocol control the B zone has been moved to P2. SMG attachment nerf. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I don't know the full details on it. I just know the pros have been testing in scrims and stuff, or eights, just removing, I think, the muzzle attachments from, or maybe the barrel attachments, or maybe both. I can't remember for sure, but taking some attachment options off of the Jackal. And apparently that's had some backlash because the SMGs are like, this is ridiculous now. This gun is way worse than it needs to be. And the ARs are loving life now. And that's through the first major. You ask anybody if it's a SMG or an AR favored game, everyone is going to say the SMG is cooking the AR this year. So they're trying to do this to balance it out, which I don't blame them for. But do we really need to do this now? Like, to me, it seems fine just as an outside observer. Like, I actually prefer when the SMGs have a little extra firepower over the ARs, considering that the SMG usually has a tougher role on the map trying to, break into hills and enter bomb sites and stuff like that. Their movement matters a lot, so they're at risk most of the time. Yeah, I don't hate the meta as it is now. So they're testing that out. We'll see if that sticks or not. The protocol control thing, I think, is important. So it's the B zone originally was like this huge zone down in the open part of the map. Now it's just like up those stairs closer to the defense, I believe. So you're up those stairs in that P2 area for hardpoint. And it seems like the pros like that. So that's just something to keep note of, specifically for that map and mode. And then, yeah, all of these roster moves. Do you want to jump into them first? Just announce them and your thoughts on each of them?
Yeah, so for Optic, obviously, Pred is in, Hook is out. For Surge, Neptune is in, question mark. He's had a little bit of confusion on that. And then for Vegas, WXL, XSL is in, and Rojas is out, and KHHX is still out, definitely. Obviously, with Optic, this kind of ends the whole why is Pred not playing thing. There was questions about why he wasn't playing. This kind of seems to answer those. For Vancouver Surge, obviously Neptune apparently had a really good strong start in Challenger, so he's in now, and Hixie is out. He is, I'm assuming, going back to some sort of Challengers team. Again, obviously Vancouver had been struggling a lot. This might help them a bit, and then obviously we'll see what Vegas Falcons. Maybe they can win a map. Maybe they can get to a map 5. We'll see. Maybe this will help them for that. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so the Optic Texas one was announced first, and it was shocking when it first came out because a lot of the language that Optic used a month ago, 2 weeks ago, was like, Pred isn't on Optic anymore. Like, why? People were questioning Shotzi and Dashy in their streams. Is Pred coming back? What's the Pred situation? And they were hush about it. We still don't really know why they had to make the change for him. There's been rumors about potential personal issues and whatnot, but nonetheless, they made the roster change very early in the season, brought in Hook, did great up until Major 1. Now, had they performed well at Major 1, would this have happened? I don't know. I think maybe, yeah, if they're confident that Pred is good to go. We still don't really know what happened, but apparently Optic feel good enough about it now, and it makes sense after they're showing at Major 1 to bring Pred back in, keep this lineup that won champs last year, that won another major last year. It sucks for Hook because he was performing pretty well up until a couple weekends ago, but I'm sure he'll find a home. The weird thing about Hook is that a lot of people thought his home would be Vancouver. They flamed out pretty poorly. Their numbers in my model were already pretty bad going into Major 1, so a change for them made sense. Hixie out, I think, makes sense, but the fact that the rumor is now Neptune is in their lineup is interesting. Neptune's been doing well in Challengers and clearly caught the eye of Vancouver Surge, and we'll see if this is confirmed in a day or two. But it sounds like right now Neptune is going to fill Hixie's spot, which is weird because Hook had been on this team last year and had played with a couple of the other players on this team. And he looked good so far this year, so why not bring him back in? I don't know. Maybe we haven't heard Neptune confirmed because they're still thinking about bringing in Hook. We'll see. Maybe by the time people are listening to this, they'll know for sure what's going on with Vancouver, but a change had to take place, I think, for them, and this one makes sense, at least what we know of it so far. And yeah, Vegas Falcons, I don't want to touch on it too much. Still very much the worst team in the league. Roxas, they're sent into the bench, and I think Wixel is how you pronounce his name, is coming in. We'll see if it works or not. And then they did just update that Kicks, I think is how you say the name on the far right there. He was their best player early in the season, and they announced that he would be sidelined indefinitely a month ago, or more than that now. And then they just released another statement that he's still out indefinitely. Hope all is well with him. I think he has some personal matter going on as well. He might be back in Saudi Arabia right now. But yeah, just some turnover for Vegas, worth noting, but we'll see how it shakes out in their 2 matches this weekend.
Hmm. Yeah, we'll have to see how it all shakes out there. So now this is your probability. This is your team's ranking, right? Of which is the best team in terms of probability of beating the next team lower than it, right? So obviously, FaZe has a 58% chance of beating Thieves. Thieves has a 57% chance of beating Ultra, etc., down the line. Any comments on this? Like, where do you see? Do you think this is roughly? This is your modeling. How do you think this is correct? Are there any ones where you question your model a little bit? What do you think about this one?
Yeah, so this is something I just like to post every now and then throughout the season just to get an idea of the structure of the league as a whole. Like, where do the tier breaks happen among these teams? And I think you could make a case. I tiered these kind of off of feel. The numbers are my model's numbers against the team below that. But yeah, Thieves, I threw in a tier by themselves under FaZe. And I see a lot of FaZe and Thieves on the same tier, FaZe being 1, Thieves being 2. I think that's definitely the case. But I would put them by themselves, Thieves, just because we've seen their last 3 matches now that they've gone head-to-head with FaZe. They've lost each time. They've all been pretty close, but at a certain point, I have to see Thieves win one of those. And I do think if they did win one of those, I would be comfortable throwing them in the tier with FaZe. Whether that was the winners final, whether that was the grand final of Major 1, whether it was the Major 1 qualifier match that they played, or the minor one, it was minor 1, excuse me, where they played. Yeah, Thieves are right there, but just not quite where FaZe are right now. FaZe have won, I think, 8 straight or 9 straight matches at this point. They're just on another level. And then, yeah, I think the numbers are pretty accurate for everybody else. A couple other teams I'll shout out. Carolina are lumped in with Toronto and Optic in the B tier. I think that's very justified. You take a look at what they did at the Major just a couple weekends ago, and it's like sneaky kind of impressive. They did lose round 1 to Thieves, who we know are great. Some people are putting Thieves in the S tier. And they did pull a map win off of Thieves, which is something of note. It's not anything crazy, but they did have that. And then they ran through the teams they played in lower bracket. They played Vegas in round 1. Again, not a lot you can glean from that, but they did sweep them, which is what you should expect from a good team. And then they beat Optic 3-1, and that was, for a lot of people, the big talking point of the tournament. And as you can see by my numbers, Optic is still a 52% favorite today versus Carolina. And yeah, I think that's right. They are very close to each other. Carolina did get the win at Major 1, and then the next round they play Ultra, another team in that same tier with them, and they beat them in a Game 5. So some quality wins. They then run into Heretics on Sunday and lose. I thought they were very live to win that game, but Heretics just were the wrong team to play, it seemed, at that spot. But yeah, Carolina, I think, did a lot to help their just overall ranking. You know, I was a Boston guy. They're showing at Major 1 definitely hurt them. I would say before Major 1, they were on that B tier with those other teams. Clearly took a step back, got blown out by FaZe, which most everybody did. And then, yeah, to lose to New York, even in a Game 5, not the greatest showing, in my opinion. And then, yeah, everybody else in the C tier, you can kind of mix and match how you want. A lot of people are putting Miami way up in their rankings just based on their finish from Major 1. And it was great. Like, a top 3 finish is amazing. I just don't want to take away too much from their specific results. And I do want to factor in what they did in the qualifier stage in Minor 1. And that was a lot of good, okay results. overall. And I don't know. I don't want to take too much away from them because the major was in Spain, but that seemed to have had a huge boost to their performance as well. So I think Miami are there. You could maybe bump them up a couple spots if you wanted to. And then, yeah, Vegas, obviously in a tier of their own, probably should be one tier down from this, but I didn't want to be that mean to them. But yeah, I'll update this throughout the year, probably after Major 2 or just before Major, to see how all these teams have shifted. But for right now, I think it's about right. And I know other people have their opinions, but at least for modeling goes, I think the model right now, at least on my end, is doing a pretty good job so far.
Yeah, I think there's nothing here that strikes me as wrong or off. I think Carolina has showed really surprising resilience at this point. I'm still a little shocked at just how strong they are. I would have expected a fall off by now, but to be fair, I think there has been a bit of a fall off. That's why they're where they are now. But we'll have to see how that breaks out over the next few weeks, minor two, major two, etc. Moving on, let's go with expected wins. Here are your expected wins. So you've got FaZe on 5.8 wins. I've got Thieves at 5.1. This is out of 7 wins, too. There's 7 possible games.
Mm-hmm.
Toronto at 4.86. Carolina 4.4. Texas 3.79. LAG 3.6. Boston 3.4. Minnesota 3.3. Cloud9 2.58. Miami 2.5. Vancouver 1.87. And then you've got Vegas at zero point 0.8. I have something slightly different here. I've got FaZe at 6.25. So just a little bit higher. Just those top teams just squeezing the juice out of those bottom teams. They're just a little bit more. Thieves 5.77, Toronto 5.12, LAG 4.14, Minnesota 4.03, Cloud9 3.21, Optic 3.18, Carolina 2.9, Miami 2.46. Boston 2.25, Vegas 1.48, and then Vancouver 1.20. So really hurting, pushing down Vancouver, and maybe even giving a little bit of hope to Vegas there to get a win, right? That's 1.5 wins expected. Key note there on both of our projections with Optic, we can only really project it forward with what it was with Pook, not with Pred. We can't really undo it and go back. I think Pred played for, 2 weeks? He was gone before minor one, I think. Yeah, not the best sort of data set for that. I expect Optic will overperform. Just the question is how much. There are some markets where you can actually bet on who's the number one team going to be out after the qualifiers. FaZe is the favorite at plus 110. Thieves are, I think, at plus 250, I think, something like that. I think you're probably, basically from yours or mine, you're maybe seeing a little bit of value there on Toronto or Carolina, but I don't see a ton of value in that market. I'm not like, oh, okay, I think one of these teams should be the favorite, and it's not right. FaZe and Thieves don't play each other. FaZe's schedule is very, very easy. I don't really see a much point in kind of messing with that. So I think I'm just going to leave that alone. What do you think of that? Do you see any kind of value in these qualifier wins markets or no?
Yeah, it's tricky. I haven't really run my numbers to simulate every Major 2 qualifier match and then see how many times Atlanta are the 1 seed based off of that. You'd have to build in like tiebreaker logic. Doug Leby does really great work with this, looking at like market implied odds for each match and then like running that through a simulation. He has tiebreaker procedures all figured out. Although I think they changed on him this year for some reason. He was tweeting about that during the last week of the Major 1 qualifiers. But nonetheless, he's a great guy to go to for that specific thing of just who is getting the 1 seed or 2 seed or 3 seed. These numbers are more just along the lines of this is kind of where we think these teams are going to land seed-wise or win-wise for the Major 2 qualifiers. Not shocked at all to see that we both have FaZe 1, Thieves 2. Not that that's guaranteed to be the case, but they're the best 2 teams and they don't play each other, so that is hugely beneficial to both of them. One thing, or a couple things I want to point out with both your numbers and my numbers, I think people might be surprised to see Optic as low as they are in both of ours. So I have Optic as the 5 seed right now, sitting at about 3.8 wins. You have them as the 7 seed right now, 3.2 wins. And that, for me at least, it has less to do with Optic are struggling. Obviously, the lineup change, we don't know how that's going to work. I think it could be helpful for them, actually. But their schedule is absolutely brutal, which is funny because Major 2, I believe, is in They are hosting it in North Texas. But they have FaZe, they have Carolina, who, as far as my numbers go, they are right there with. That's a coin toss. They play Toronto, again, close to a coin toss game. And they have LA Thieves, who I think most people would say are better than them at this stage in time. Their other matches are Rocker, Heretics, who just had a top 3 finish, and LA Gorillas, who I think are like a sneaky, okay team despite what they've shown so far. Optic is honestly a 3-4 record. I don't think is crazy. I would expect 4-3, but yeah, don't be shocked if Optic somehow end up as the 7 seed or the 8 seed because they maybe struggle at first with Pred back, and that schedule is so tough. So yeah, Optic are one team I'm definitely going to watch through all of this. And then, yeah, I don't know, just a couple other things with like that cut line, Boston, Minnesota, Cloud9, Miami, Vancouver. Now I have an idea of who I think will qualify for the winner's bracket and who won't, but that group right around the 8 seed is really tough to figure out. And I know you have Cloud9 much higher than I do, so we differ in some aspects for those like middling teams, but yeah, for the most part, I think these are about right for what we could expect for Major 2.
Yeah, I think that's probably about right as well. Okay, moving on to the games themselves. Friday, you've got Thieves versus Carolina. Thieves are minus 400. Carolina's plus 275. Thieves minus 1.5, minus 188. Thieves minus 52.5 point spread in the hard point, 1.5 round favorites in the search, and 1.5 round favorites in the control. Across the board here, I've got some slight value in the Thieves minus 1.5. You don't. Yeah, I'm just sticking with that. I think that's probably my only play here on the board for this. What do you see in this game? You seem to like Carolina a little bit in this game, at least in terms of keeping it close.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did see this round 1 of Major 1. LA Thieves got that 3-1 victory. Carolina won the Search and Destroy. Carolina at that time were even money to win map 2, now minus 120. Largely, I would say, based off of that specific match and the fact that Thieves have continued to struggle in Search and Destroy really throughout the year. It doesn't get talked about a lot because Thieves are so good in hardpoint and control that like we don't see them play Search that much because a lot of their series end in a sweep or they end after map 4, and the Search and Destroy issues can be covered up. But that like Thieves' Search, like their woes were on full display on Sunday specifically of Major 1. Like they had to go to a map 5 versus FaZe, and they lost the map 5. And then FaZe, they won the grand finals by winning 3 searches and a control, I believe. No hard points. They let those go to Thieves, but FaZe were just dominant when it came to search, and then got one of those controls to get them over the finish line. Yeah, I still have Carolina favored in Search and Destroy pretty comfortably. I would expect a split if they were to play 2 of them, but I think Carolina could absolutely win both if it goes that way. And yeah, I think Carolina are at least somewhat competitive in hardpoint and control, where I could see them getting one of those wins. So the path is narrow. I feel like any game against LA Thieves, the path is narrow. You got to probably win both searches and then win map 1, 3, or 4. One of those. Take your pick. That's the trouble, I would say, with Carolina. I do fully expect LA Thieves to win this, probably a 3-1. But yeah, I think Carolina absolutely could make this interesting. And again, I just think Carolina's performance at Major 1, sneaky underrated. They got top 4, but they ran through some really good teams to get to that spot overall. So yeah, I expect this to be a really good match again. But yeah, I don't blame you at all if you like Thieves. They look like they're right there. There's one team better than them. And yeah, I don't know. They could flip a switch at any moment and just be the best team in the game. I don't doubt that at all. But yeah, I guess I lean Carolina here ever so slightly.
Yeah, very fair. Next up, Boston versus Vegas. Boston minus 10,000 on the money line. Nice, cool 10,000. Vegas plus 1,400. Minus 2.5, minus 163. 87.5 point favorites in the hard point. 1.5 round favorites in the search. And minus 1,000 in the control. No control spread there. Yeah, I think you also here are much less bullish on Boston here. We are of the sense that this Boston team this Vegas team is not nearly as bad as people think. And remember that with the books here, sometimes when there's a lot of one-way action on something, you have to pump up that line because if not, no one's going to bet it. So you get value on those kinds of lines, and the fact that you're getting plus 2.5 or plus 120, there's a lot of value there. Yeah, I think Vegas here. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think you're crazy. Yeah, and I'm the Boston Breach guy, or at least I was up until Major 1. Yeah, I think Vegas's search is flying under the radar a little, and I think Boston's control is also their woes in that specific game mode are also flying under the radar. Boston haven't won a round in control in quite some time. It was on full display at Major 1. The last couple weeks of qualifiers, Boston's control has been falling off really badly. And now, is Vegas a team that can take advantage of that? Probably not, but maybe. Vegas do have at least one control win on the year so far. And if you're going to get another control win, it seems like it's going to be against a team that is just reeling in control right now. I think a path is absolutely there for Vegas to at least force a game 4, perhaps a game 5. And if it were to get to a game 5, I think it's basically a coin flip who wins that. As weird as it is to say, and we have no idea how this Vegas roster change is going to impact things. Hopefully it's for the better, though. They really can't get much worse is the whole thing to it. I think Boston are like clear, heavy favorites in hardpoint. They've been pretty consistently good at that all year. That's an issue for Vegas, obviously, but can you go map 2, map 3, map 5 and get a win? Maybe, and we're not even asking for that. Like, just to not get swept, plus 120 seems great to me. If you want to go specific and say, okay, if they're not getting swept, it's probably because of map 2 and take a plus 175 map 2, that can work as well. But yeah, I just think we're getting to a point now where Vegas, they just keep losing, and the books are just like, they just keep upping their price, because at some point you have to make a price that people would want to pay for, and we're getting to that point with Vegas right now. This could be a weird one. I do expect Boston to win, but don't be shocked if Vegas show signs of life in this match, because they absolutely could. I'm with you on this, as weird as it is to say.
I agree. Yeah, this could be the moment Vegas breaks out here. Next up is FaZe versus Vancouver. FaZe minus 2,500 on the money line. Surge plus 800. FaZe minus 2.5, minus 120. Minus 1,000 in map 1. Minus 334 in map 2. And minus 400 in map 3. Not much disagreement here. This one would be, I'm not touching, this would be more of a speculative play as to whether or not what you think Vancouver can do. Maybe usually teams who make a team change, they usually get a bit better. That's been a couple of years that's happened, but it's not really been much. In the past years it's happened, but in the last couple of years they still haven't been able to challenge the top teams. They've only been able to challenge like the 4, 5, 6 team. Not really the 1 and 2 teams, and there's very clearly a 1 and 2 team here. Yeah, I'm not going to touch this, but I'm excited to watch this game. What do you think?
Yeah, I am much the same way here. I think the model compared to the market, it's pretty spot on. The prices seem about right. FaZe should be a huge favorite in this one, and they are. Yeah, I don't know. It's tricky. I think if you were to make me pick, would you rather have FaZe minus 2.5 or Vancouver plus 2.5? And they're both minus 120. I think if you're going to make me pick, I would say Vancouver, just based on, I think this team change is going to help. I don't know if it will, but I would think it would. I'll put it that way. But there's just so many unknowns with that. It makes it tricky to pick, and Vancouver have already not looked great throughout this season so far. It's like, where do you find your map wins? Again, probably through search, maybe through control, but hardpoint seems a bit far-fetched at this point. I don't know. It's weird with Vancouver. They obviously play their online matches all the way in Vancouver, as far as I know. They're way up there in the Northwest. So I think they have a better shot online than on LAN, at least right now, just based on like weirdness with like server locations and stuff like that and ping. And I know the league tries to do its best in like making that not an advantage for one team or another. But yeah, I would hope Vancouver can at least push this to a game 4. So we'll see how it goes in the end. I also think it's partly just FaZe look unstoppable right now, so you have to juice up their prices quite a bit. And at a certain point, the opposite of Vegas, at a certain point that dam breaks, right? And these teams just get way too expensive to take. I think we're nearing that for Atlanta at this point in time, but I don't have a ton of confidence in Surge, even with their roster change, to be a slam dunk pick in any mode. Curious to see how it plays out, but not really going to touch this one.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement on that. Next up, first match on Saturday, LAG versus Boston. Boston is minus 150 on the money line, LAG plus 110, minus 1.5 plus 162, plus 1.5 minus 225. Boston is 15.5 point favorites in the hard point, 1.5 round favorites in the search, and then actually 1.5 round underdog in the control. Looking at my model actually really likes LAG here, and I actually have already gone ahead and bet LAG here. Yeah, my model thinks LAG isn't that bad, and they were not that bad in the major either. I'm gonna take LAG here. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I don't blame you at all. My model sees it very much like where the market has it, with a couple exceptions in specific game modes. So, like I just mentioned with Boston Breach, like their control has been a huge issue as of late. LAG are minus 200 in map 3. At first, you see that and you might say, ooh, that seems steep, but according to both of our models, like they should be even higher. They should be like minus 300 maybe. LAG, if they want to win, it seems like map 3 is a non-negotiable at this point, and then you probably have to at least split your hard points and split your searches, and there's your win. So I don't think it's out of the question by any means. I think LAG probably of any team so far this year have underperformed the most. And that can be a loaded term sometimes, right? Obviously, if you're a good team, you should be winning. But I don't see these teams too dissimilar. It's just one has a lot more wins than the other, that being Boston Breach. But I wouldn't be shocked at all if Major 1 or Major 2 qualifiers end. We look up, LAG has 4 wins, maybe even 5 wins, and Boston Breach now have 2 wins or 3 wins. That wouldn't shock me at all, even though neither of these rosters have changed whatsoever. I just think we are in a good spot here. They had a gauntlet of a schedule in the Major 1 qualifiers that led to a loser's bracket start. And then unfortunately they get Optic in that first round. So hopefully things get easier for them, and they do. But this Boston game, very winnable. And then after this, they get Miami, Vancouver, Cloud9, Vegas. That's a nice run before they end with FaZe and Optic. They got to get their wins early. I think they can. I think this one is gettable for them, but I think the prices are about right. I think Boston maybe are a slight favorite, but LAG are very live to win this one, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Saturday match 2, Miami versus Minnesota. Minnesota minus 150 on the money line, Miami plus 110, minus 1.5 plus 175, plus 1.5 minus 250. Miami minus 12.5 point favorites in the hard point. Minnesota 1.5 round favorites in the search, and then 1.5 round favorites in the control, but that is shaded to plus 162. My model really likes Minnesota here, and especially the minus 1.5. My model's got that minus 1.5 up to almost 50% chance here. I like you're seeing the opposite. You don't love Miami here, but you don't hate them either. I think. Do you see any value here, or are you just a full on, like, just leave this one alone?
Yeah, this one surprised me a lot. Just the prices on this one. I thought based on their finish at Major 1, I really expected Miami to be favored in this spot, and for me to like Minnesota, because these teams, in my model, not too dissimilar, but I do have Rocker as a favorite in this specific match. Are they a minus 150 favorite? That's debatable, I think. I don't know if I'd price them that high. I think Minnesota should be favored, but maybe more along the lines of minus 140, minus 130, something like that. But yeah, really surprised. Maybe this price does shift as we get closer to the weekend, just because from what I've seen, people are ranking Miami quite high just based off of what they did at Major 1. And again, it was very impressive. It was awesome to see. They clearly were playing their best COD of the year so far. So why aren't they favored over Rocker, who had a good, not great major? They made top 6, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, which for them, good for them. That should be where you want to be. But yeah, the prices are weird to me. If you like Minnesota at these prices, I'm fine with that, because I would prefer that side of this. I expect Minnesota to win. I think it probably could be a 3-2. Rocker's advantage is likely in the search and destroy rather than the hard point. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked either way. Even if Miami gets the win here, it's just positive momentum for them. But yeah, I expect Rocker to maybe surprise some folks because I expect most of the public to like Miami in this spot.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the public will like miss. Or I think actually they probably would. They'd be on Miami here, right? That's the thing. So maybe that's why we're getting a little bit of shorter line. But this one will be an interesting one to see for sure. Moving on to Saturday match three, Optic versus FaZe on minus 500 on the money line. Optic plus 333, FaZe minus 1.5, minus 175. 32.5 point favorites in the hard point, 1.5 round favorites in the search, and 1.5 round favorites in the control. And yeah, my model lines up pretty well with this. I'm not really seeing much value either way. You are seeing some value on Optic, though, which I think is very fair. That's not a crazy thing to say, especially with Pred, right? There's an argument that my model should be showing more value on them, with assuming Pred being in the lineup here. What are your thoughts on this one? Do you see any sort of value in Optic here? Do you want to play Optic here, given the fact that Pred is a factor in this, or do you want to just stay away from this one?
Yeah, no, very much. I very much like Optic in this spot, which is hard to say because we know how FaZe have looked lately, and we don't really know how Optic is going to look in their first weekend back with Pred. But the price on this match and in the other Optic match shifted way against Optic, making them a easier price to pay. And I really don't understand it. I think Optic, I get it. Major 1 was not kind to them, and it was surprising nonetheless. We expected Optic to be better on LAN, and they finished top 8. And that happens sometimes. There was a major last year where Optic went 7-0 in the qualifiers, were the 1 seed, and ran through the table. And then the next major, they like just flamed out top 12. Like, good teams go up and down throughout the year. We saw it with FaZe, right? FaZe through the first couple weeks of the season were like, what's going on? FaZe is 0-3. Are they dead? What happened to them? And then, they win 8 or 9 straight and they look completely fine and they're the best team in the league. Optic, I think, are definitely underdogs in this spot. Don't get me wrong. But these prices are insane, crazy. I think Optic are slight underdogs in map 1, map 2, and map 3. But that being said, there's a difference between being underdogs in every map and being plus 333 on the money line. That is a very good price to pay for Optics. I really like the plus 1.5 in this spot specifically. I think they can actually hang with Atlanta the best when it comes to hardpoint. Their search Atlanta's search is very good at this point. But again, early in the season, I think my numbers are a little skewed towards these teams that are overperforming in search and destroy, and I would say Atlanta maybe are on that cusp of just they're winning search at an unbelievable rate that will come down to earth. And then, yeah, Optic and Control, very live. That's been a good mode for them. Nothing crazy, but could they beat Atlanta? I think they could. I expect FaZe to win, but I really think Optic can push them to their limit and maybe even win in like a game 5 if it gets to that point. But yeah, I have faith in Optic. I think the Pred reinsertion into the lineup will be good for them. Will it pay off in weekend number 1? Maybe not. They have a tough game here. But the fact that Optic even likes Pred enough to reinsert him into the lineup, I think is a really good sign for them moving forward. I want to buy on Optic, and I think this price is like more than justifiable to do.
Yeah, that is a fair point that, hey, maybe there is some room to buy in for Optic on this price, especially plus 1.5, plus 125. If Pred is back in, if Optic gets back to their peak performance, they should be able to be competitive with FaZe. They should be competitive. One of the best times to bet Optic is when they are a big underdog like this, right? So, we'll see. Saturday match 4, Cloud9 versus Ultra minus 225 on the money line, minus 1.5, plus 120. 15.5 point favorites in the hard point, 1.5 round favorites in the search, and then technically 1.5 round underdogs in the control, but it's shaded 120 minus 120 either way, basically a 50-50 in the control. My model likes, and your model also likes, the Toronto minus 1.5, and especially when you're getting that plus money, that's pretty attractive. I would say that's a pretty attractive buy. Even the money line is a little bit of value on that one. Do you see the same thing as my model and see this as a nice little play here?
Yeah, and again, a lot of movement on all of these matches really over the last couple days. This one included. Toronto, I believe, were minus 300 to win this, now just minus 225, which to a lot of people it might sound like that's not a big move. That is a big move. That's you're chopping off like a 5% win probability for Toronto for reasons unknown. Neither of these teams have made roster moves. Cloud9 might announce a roster move. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. Toronto are unlikely to, but maybe they could. I don't know. But I don't know why Cloud9, their showing at Major 1 was better than I thought. I thought they would get bounced in round 1. They get the win over Breach, a close one, all things being equal, but then they lose to Rocker in the next round, and there's your tournament. They outperformed my expectations by winning their opening match, but I don't know, was any of that super impressive for Cloud9? I would say no. They overperformed, good for them, but I'm not really changing my opinion of Cloud9 based on what they did. Same kind of thing with Toronto. I felt very good about their odds beating Vancouver in round 1, and they took care of them quite easily. And now we've seen where Vancouver have fallen off to. But then they run into Atlanta in round 2. That doesn't go well. What a surprise. And then, yeah, they flame out there toward the end in the loser's bracket run. They lose to Carolina, but again, that one could have gone either way, and I think Carolina are a quality team that belong in that conversation with Toronto and with Optic. And yeah, sometimes you just lose those games. I think just Major 1, like those results are somehow skewing this price in favor of Cloud9, but I'm with you on Toronto here. The minus 1.5 is a good price. I like them in map 1, map 2, map 3. Take your pick. I think they should be clear favorites in all of those. My one concern with Toronto is their reliance on search and destroy. To me, they are still the best team in that game mode. My model has them as a 75% favorite. That might be high, a little high, but I still think they should be comfortable favorites in search and destroy. And yeah, I just think they're the clearly better hardpoint team, better control team. They were amazing online during the Major 1 qualifiers. Now we're back online against a team that struggled to find a win. Yeah, all roads point to Toronto for me. I think they get this done pretty easily. I think they're still a very quality team, and I just need to see more from Cloud9 at this point.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't. They're randomly one of the more popular teams in the league, but their just results have just not shown that at all right, and I just don't see this as one of the better teams in the league. That's my take on it. Sunday, moving on to Sunday, Vegas versus Thieves. Another, is that it? No, that's not. It's not 10,000. That's 100,000 on the money line. You would have to bet $100,000 to win $100 on Thieves to win. First of all, I don't think they'd even let you do that. I think they're not
Yeah,
even
I
going to
don't
let you get
know.
anywhere close to the max bet on that. But minus 275, a negative 10,000 in the hard point, negative 95.5 point spread there, 1.5 rounds in the search, off the board in the control. Yeah, and we're not in any agreement. That being said, though, we do see some value. The plus 2.5 is plus 200. Viewing the plus 2.5 as just winning map 2 is not bad, right? We think there's not a bad chance that they actually win map 2. But that being said, the map 2 win probability is just plus 240, right? So it is what it is there, but this is clearly a search team. And I think that in the map 2 spread, like the plus 1.5 is probably some value on there. Yeah, I think obviously Thieves are going to win this game, but this could be another hard Vegas search spread value bet here.
Yeah, totally buy that again. It's weird, right? We continue to like Vegas. Obviously, they keep losing. But again, they've shown enough in Search and Destroy where it's, yeah, they could beat Thieves. My model has this as a dead on 50-50 map 2. And if you're getting one of the teams at plus 240, sign me up all day. Now, in my heart of hearts, if I was a bookmaker and I have to set a line for this game, map 2, maybe I'd make Thieves like a 55-45 favorite there. But that's still not even, that's nowhere close to plus 240. If you're a 45% to win, that's, what is that, like plus 120? You're getting double that, plus 240. Yeah, obviously, tons of value on Vegas map 2. Could they lose? Yes, obviously they could lose. It's a coin flip. But even if you wanted to take them plus 1.5 in map 2. You're getting plus 137 out. The books don't even expect Vegas to win 5 rounds. I think they're super live to do that. I don't see why not. Again, Thieves have struggled in Search and Destroy. I have them as the 10th best team in Search and Destroy. Their win percentage is a little better than that, but they get blown out sometimes. They look lost sometimes. So yeah, I would not be shocked if Vegas pull off the win in that mode specifically. I would be shocked if they get a hard point win or a control win. My model, though, is still showing some value because those are 14-1 and 12-1 to even happen. We have seen it with control this year for Vegas, so I'd prefer Vegas map 3 at 12-1 than Vegas map 1 because they're 0-13 when it comes to hardpoint, and this is the best hardpoint team in the league by all accounts. So, yeah, I don't know. Vegas are so weird in that they are so clearly the worst team in the league, yet they've shown enough in one specific game mode where, like, they could very easily cover this spread because, oh yeah, look, they won 6-3 map 2. Oh yeah, sometimes they'll just do that because it's Search and Destroy and things can get weird. So, yeah, I expect Thieves to win this pretty comfortably, all things considered, but the price on Vegas, especially map 2, is super enticing. So, yeah, famous
Yeah,
last
definitely
words.
some Vegas. It was funny because for Major 1, I saw that I had originally wanted to bet Vegas plus 2.5 at plus 100. Um, but then I realized, I'm like, why would I bet that when I can bet Vegas plus 1.5 map 2 at plus 100? So it's basically the same thing, except that it gives me additional protection in case they lose and they only get to 5 rounds. It goes to round 11 or something, they lose, then it gives me additional protection. And sure enough, what happened? That's exactly what happened, right? They got to a map around 11, lost it. They're up 5-1, lost the round 11, and I'm sitting pretty because I'm like, all right, this is great, right? I won. It doesn't matter to me, but I got the same. I got the same value play, right? It's the exact same price, but and the
Yeah,
conditional probability is
and
basically the same.
yeah. One thing I want to mention too, that was bad that they blew that, obviously. You're up 5-1, you expect to win. But let's not forget, that's Carolina Royal Ravens. They pushed to around 11, who are a great Search and Destroy team. They've played a ton of Search so far this year, and they've looked good throughout the year. Vegas are competing in Search and Destroy with other good Search teams. Do they always win? No, but they at least are competing, and that is huge for a team as bad as they are. Yeah, that's our caveat with Vegas. It's weird, but it could work. Just trust us on this.
Yeah, conditional probability, it works. Sunday match 2, Toronto versus Carolina. Toronto minus 130 on the money line, minus 1.5 plus 162. 9.5 point spread in the hard point, 1.5 round favorites in the search, and then basically dead even in the control, minus 120 each way on that. My model likes Toronto to win, and a little bit the minus 1.5, but not a lot of clear value there in minus 1.5. It really likes Toronto in the search though. But outside of that, not a lot of value here not a lot of value here in this match. Just maybe Toronto to win, and maybe to win in the search. You have your model's basically right dead on with the markets here. You don't see much value in here at all, do you?
Nope. Yeah, this one is priced very accurately. I think if I was pricing this match, this is where I would put it. These prices on this match specifically, I think are what that like Minnesota match should be. Like Miami should be even, Minnesota minus 138. Minnesota heaviest favorites in the search, but not by a lot. That's what this match feels like to me. The teams on the same tier with one another. Like you saw earlier, Carolina and Toronto to me, very much on the same tier. We saw Carolina get the win at Major 1 in this specific match. Wouldn't be a shocker if they got it. Yeah, I can't really point to anything here. These teams are very evenly matched. Map 1, Map 2, Map 3 across the board. So yeah, I think this is just going to be a really good match. Curious to see if Carolina can get the win again or if Toronto avenged that loss from a couple weeks ago. But yeah, this should be a really good match and maybe one that people aren't super hyped about because Phase aren't involved, Thieves aren't involved, Optics not involved, but let the record show this is a really big match, especially when it comes to seeding, I think, for Major 2. Just kick back, relax, and watch this one because it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I agree on that. Next up, Vancouver versus Cloud9, minus 180 the money line. Vancouver plus 137, minus 1.5 plus 120. plus 1.5, minus 163. No spreads in this one, but Cloud9 minus 175 in the hard point, minus 138 in the search, and minus 138 in the control. Yeah, pretty much on book on this. My model slightly likes Cloud9, but not by a lot here. And again, that doesn't price in Hixie, right? So this could be if sorry, with Hixie gone and all that, this could look very different when we actually see this. I'm gonna wait on and see on this one, right? I feel like this number is gonna look very different when this game is actually played. Either they look good against FaZe and this number radically shifts one way, or they don't and this number probably shifts towards Cloud9. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a weird one. According to my numbers, this is the 11th best team in the league versus the 10th best team in the league. Yay. But we could still learn a lot from this nonetheless. Yeah, Vancouver Surge they have that roster move. We'll see if that pays off. They'll likely struggle against FaZe in their opening match. And yeah, that Cloud9 game earlier in the week against Toronto, I'm just like, I really like Toronto in that spot. So I think both of these teams are going to come into this reeling off of a couple losses. Is Cloud9 a justified minus 188 favorite? I don't think so. Again, I think the pricing of this match should be the last match we just talked about. I just think there are so many matches this weekend and some potential hypothetical matches in the future where I would prefer one team over another, but I'd only make them minus 138. I'm not really going to push it to minus 150 or minus 188 in this instance. I don't know. There's still a lot that I think we have to iron out, and I'm very confident these teams are in the same tier with one another. I guess I prefer Vancouver. I think if I'm going to take anything, I would just money line to win. I think they could. Maybe this roster move is more beneficial than we think. I don't know. But yeah, this one's mostly a stay away for me. Maybe these teams can somewhat impress us even in losses to FaZe and Toronto earlier in the weekend. And then maybe I'll watch this game a little more closely if that were the case. But yeah, hard to get behind anything really in this spot here. But I guess I prefer Surge ever so slightly.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think you could make the argument to that this play should be Surge, but we'll see. I think I'll probably leave this one alone. And last but not least, Sunday match number 4, Optic versus Minnesota. Optic minus 138 on the money line at minus 1.5 plus 137. 22.5 point favorites in the hard point. 1.5 round underdogs in the search, actually, and then 1.5 round favorites in the control, but that is shaded to plus 200. Yeah, my model likes Minnesota, but at the same time, again, with Pred coming back, Optic should be better. And I think that maybe Optics, if Optic is in fact a very clearly a top 4 team after with Pred coming back, then minus 138 is a steal here, very clearly a steal here. There's not even a choice as to who the better team is here. So it's extremely debatable that maybe Optic is the play here. Maybe and this is the thing where you're gonna know on Friday, right? Optic versus FaZe on Friday. If Optic is looking good, just immediately bet this. Just 100% immediately start betting this, right? And that's the thing. So, because this is the thing. If things change, start grabbing those numbers quick because they change quick too, right? So that's my take on this one at least.
Yeah, I was surprised to see our models differ so much on this, just because my model says Optic are a big value here. Minus 138 is nothing. And I buy into that. My gut says that number is way too nice. That seems wrong. If Optic were playing Minnesota in winners round 1 of Major 1, like just a couple weeks ago, wouldn't Optic have been like a minus 200 or minus 250 favorite? And maybe they would have lost. They lost to Miami in round 1. Like, they clearly were not themselves that weekend. But I don't know if Minnesota did much in their losers bracket run to justify their neck and neck with Optic all of a sudden. I still think Optic are a clear tier above them. And I think this is just mostly uncertainty about the Pred lineup change, which I feel like we don't need a lot of because we've seen that roster win champs and win another major prior to that. And I think they're going to be just fine. And so it's partly that and partly just Optic flamed out at Major 1. So we don't feel good about them now. And I don't know, man. Majors can be fluky results that I think get overweighted in people's minds. And I just expect Optic to bounce back pretty nice. I expect them to be themselves. And if they're themselves, then minus 138 is not correct at all. I really would expect this number to move quite a bit as we approach the weekend. But yeah, I can't make a case for Minnesota. Could Minnesota win? Absolutely. They are like a league average team. They in Optic aren't phased. They're not thieves. Could a league average team beat this version of Optic? Yes. Boston Breach beat Optic with this Optic lineup in week 1 of the season. And that was a long time ago, but Boston Breach and Minnesota probably in the same ballpark of team, so wouldn't be a surprise whatsoever. But all that being said, yeah, I can't hammer the table enough for Optic. I think they are the right side here. My gut says it. My model says it. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm lost, but I like Optic quite a bit to bounce back.
Yeah, I think there is a fair argument to make that Optic should be able to bounce back in this spot, and maybe will again if they look good against FaZe, I think immediately turn around and bet them here. Models versus markets, our picks for this week. I've got Minnesota minus 150 in the money line against Miami. I've got Thieves minus 1.5 versus Carolina, and give me the Vegas Falcons plus 2.5 versus Boston. They're itching to win a hard point. At some point, this team is going to win a hard point. I'm just not sure when, but it will be at some point. You're doubling up with Optic there. You're doubling up Optic versus Minnesota, Optic versus FaZe, and then also you're going Vegas Falcons plus 240 money map 2 versus Thieves. Any comments on those or?
Yeah, again, I like Optic quite a bit. I think their prices have shifted way too much. I'll take them in both of their matches in different capacities, money line versus rocker and the plus 1.5 versus FaZe. And yeah, Vegas, I had trouble. I almost picked what you picked there, plus 2.5 plus 120 versus Boston. I think that's a great pick because we like Vegas map 2 against Boston, but totally think they could win control versus Boston because Boston's control has been very bad lately. So I really like that, but I opted to go with their more difficult matchup because I actually think they have a better shot beating Thieves in a Search and Destroy than beating Boston, and the price at plus 240 is just crazy to me. Yeah, we're rolling with Vegas, and it's definitely not a bad idea.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So, all right. So, combined model plays, we're all over Vegas there on Friday, all over Boston. Saturday, LEG plus 1.5 and map 3, Minnesota, map 2, Optic, map 1, Toronto, all over Toronto versus, I believe that's Cloud9, or no, Carolina, right? That's Carolina on Saturday. And then Sunday, all over Vegas. We like Vegas against Thieves to some extent, and then obviously Toronto, and then Optic against Minnesota there as well. Next week we're gonna be for Major 2 Week 2, and which is actually gonna be the last one before Minor 2. So yeah, we'll see you guys next week, and we'll talk about the games next week, and I'll be back on camera next week. See everybody then.